All right, let's dive in. Today, we are tackling one of the most challenging pathogens in modern medicine, Acinetobacter baumannii. This thing is a true master of survival, a huge problem in hospitals, and we're about to break down exactly why. And to get right to the point, this isn't just hype. The World Health Organization has put carbapenem-resistant Acinetobacter baumannii on its critical priority list. That puts it in the absolute highest threat category, right alongside the scariest superbugs we're currently fighting. So, this deep dive is really for my fellow medical microbiologists out there. All the info we're covering today has been pulled together from a pretty comprehensive Gemini deep search analysis, and the fantastic images you'll see are courtesy of Microbe Canvas. Here's our game plan. We're going to follow the bug from the lab bench to the patient's bedside. We'll start with how to identify it and its crazy resistance profile. Then we'll look at the diseases it causes, dive into the very different ways we try to treat it, and wrap up with the most important part, how to stop it from spreading in the first place. Okay, let's get into it. Section 1, identification and resistance. This is all about what this pathogen looks like in the lab and what makes it so tough. So, when you get this under the microscope, a gram stain usually shows you a gram-negative coccobacillus. They're these little, plump, short rods, and you'll often see them in pairs, which can kind of look like Neisseria. But right here is where we hit our first major pitfall. And here's the thing that trips people up. This bug is notorious for not decolorizing properly. It just hangs on to that crystal violet stain. So what happens? In a direct smear, say from a blood culture, it can look gram-positive, and you might mistakenly call it a staphylococcus or a streptococcus. It's a classic trap. Okay, so once you get it on a plate, things get a little more predictable. On blood agar, it's non-hemolytic. On McConkey, it's a non-lactose fermenter, but, and this is another quirk, the colonies can sometimes have this faint pinkish color, which can be confusing. For surveillance, though, chromagar is your best friend. It grows these really distinct, bright, salmon-white colonies. No mistaking that.
All right, for the biochem tests, these are your key differentiators. The first and most important test, oxidase. It's oxidase negative, which immediately separates it from something like Pseudomonas. It's also non-modal, and, this is a big one, it can grow at 44 degrees Celsius. That little trick helps you tell it apart from other, less pathogenic Acinetobacter species.
Now, you have to understand, this organism is born tough. It's got intrinsic resistance just baked right into its DNA. We're talking a chromosomal AMP-C enzyme and these super powerful efflux pumps that literally just spit antibiotics right back out. This is its baseline, before it even starts picking up extra resistance genes. Okay, this next part is a huge warning for any clinical lab. While running your standard susceptibility testing against EUCAST breakpoints is the gold standard, a lot of us are using these rapid molecular panels, and here's their massive blind spot. They do not detect the most common carbapenemase gene in Acinetobacter baumannii, which is OXA23. That means you can get a result that says no resistance genes detected, and that can be dangerously, fatally wrong. All right, we've seen it in the lab. Now let's follow it to the patient's bedside and see what kind of trouble it causes. So where do we see this pop up? Well, Acinetobacter baumannii is a true opportunist. Number 1 on the list is ventilator-associated pneumonia, and that's because it's a champion at forming biofilms on endotracheal tubes. It also causes really deadly bloodstream infections, wicked post-neurosurgical meningitis, and those severe wound infections that famously earned it the nickname Iraqibacter. Okay, this brings us to a really interesting part of the story, treatment. And believe me, when it comes to Acinetobacter baumannii, it's a house divided. We're talking two very different philosophies. So the big question is, how in the world do we actually treat this critical threat? Well, the answer is, it's complicated, and it really depends on where you are on the map. And it all comes down to one thing. How common is resistance where you are? In the Netherlands, where resistance is low, the SWAB guidelines are all about stewardship and containment. They stick to older drugs like Colistin. But internationally, where resistance is rampant, the IDSA guidelines take a much more aggressive stance, pushing for novel drugs and really high-dose regimens. So let's start in the Netherlands. If you have a confirmed carbapenem-resistant Acinetobacter baumannii infection, or CRAB, Colistin is your go-to. They hit it hard with a big loading dose, 9 million international units, and then follow up with a maintenance dose. And it's almost never used alone. It's usually combined with something like meropenem. Now, let's flip the coin and look at the IDSA guidelines. It's a totally different ballgame. They're moving away from Colistin and recommending newer agents like Sulbactam-Durlobactam. If you can't get that, the alternative is a super high-dose regimen of Ampicillin-Sulbactam, which absolutely has to be used with another drug. Cefiderocol is basically a last resort. I just want you to stop and think about that high-dose regimen for a second. 27 grams a day. That is a massive amount of Ampicillin-Sulbactam. The whole idea is to just overwhelm the bug's resistance mechanisms with sheer force. And you can't just push that massive dose in. To make it work, the pharmacokinetics are absolutely critical. Each of those 9-gram doses has to be given as an extended infusion over 4 hours. You have to do this to keep the drug levels above the MIC for as long as possible. It's the only way it has a fighting chance. Now, what about kids? Things are a little different here. Colistin, which we worry about in adults because of kidney damage, is actually a cornerstone of pediatric therapy. It seems kids tolerate it much better. They also use high-dose Sulbactam with those same 4-hour infusions. But the bottom line is the same as for adults. For serious infection, combination therapy is always the standard of care. Okay, we've talked about how incredibly hard this is to treat. So you know what that means, right? Prevention is everything. Infection control isn't just an afterthought, it's our single most powerful strategy. And when it comes to prevention, the Dutch search and destroy protocol is honestly the gold standard. It's aggressive and it's systematic. Step 1, anyone carrying the bug goes into strict isolation. Step 2, their file gets flagged, so if they ever come back to the hospital, they're isolated immediately. Step 3, a new case pops up unexpectedly, you screen every single person who shared a room with them. And Step 4, anyone transferred from a hospital abroad gets isolated and screened on arrival. It's all about building a firewall and stopping it cold. Wow, okay. That was a ton of information, and we moved fast. If you want to dig into the papers, the EU cost breakpoints, and all the nitty-gritty details and citations, please check out the linked notebook document. It's all in there. And that's our look at Acinetobacter baumannii. If this was helpful for you, please hit that subscribe button for more deep dives on critical bugs like this. But more importantly, I really want to hear from you. How are you managing carbapenem-resistant Acinetobacter baumannii at your institution? Drop your strategies in the comments below. Let's make this a conversation. Thanks for watching.